Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking an absolutely epic underdog journey, the story of Van Neferitio. Imagine for a second dying from severe overwork, only to be reincarnated as a noble prodigy in a magical fantasy world. You'd think you finally had it made, right? Well, here is the massive twist. His specific type of magic is considered entirely 100% useless by society. But as you're going to see, he uses that exact judgment to turn the world's entire hierarchy completely upside down.
It really begs a massive question. What actually happens when an overpowered prodigy gets exiled for having the most so-called useless magic in the world? Do they just give up, or do they use that very magic to reshape absolutely everything? Well, let's jump right into the story to find out. Okay, let's dive into Chapter 1, The Useless Prodigy's Exile.
So to say Van wasn't your average kid is, well, it's a massive understatement. With memories of his past life totally intact, his development was frankly absurd. By age 2, he's speaking fluently and doing complex math, completely terrifying his strict tutor, Esparta. By 4, he's somehow surviving grueling swordsmanship training, and at 6, he uses his own pocket money to buy the freedom of a child slave named Kamshin, which really proves his deep empathy. Literally everyone believes his potential is limitless, until his 8th birthday, the fateful magic aptitude test.
Now, here is the core conflict of our story. In this kingdom, magic dictates your worth. It's just how it is. Nobility must master the 4 offensive elements: earth, water, wind, and fire. But Van? He has absolutely zero aptitude for these. None. Instead, he possesses production magic. And in this world, that's viewed as a pathetic disgrace, basically only used for crafting wooden spoons. Because he can't shoot fireballs, Van's Marquis father immediately disowns him and exiles the 8-year-old boy to a remote, highly dangerous border village.
Which brings us to Chapter 2, Building a Frontier Paradise.
When Van arrives at this ruined village of just 100 impoverished people, he doesn't despair. Not at all. He sees a blank canvas. He drafts this brilliant master plan. Step 1, give the village undeniable value. Step 2, earn money to hire protection. And Step 3, completely remodel the infrastructure. And incredibly, he isn't alone in this. His loyal maid Till, the legendary mage Esparta, and Vice Commander Dio all voluntarily abandon their prestigious capital lives to follow him right into exile. With this elite squad, Van gets straight to work.
And this brilliantly illustrates where Van's father realizes he made a colossal mistake. Society thought production magic was useless, but Van's magic is essentially broken. We're talking SSS-Rank tier here. He isn't out there carving spoons. He is a human industrial 3D printer. He literally plunges his hands into the earth and instantly constructs concrete hard walls, massive defensive moats, and rows of high-quality houses. He builds a frontier paradise with his bare hands in a matter of weeks, completely shattering the kingdom's common sense.
All right, Chapter 3, Slaying the Forest Dragon.
Just as the city is really finding its footing, a massive intermediate-level forest dragon zeroes in on them. These creatures are flying natural disasters that normally wipe entire cities off the map. So, how exactly do you defeat a heavily armored, flying tank using only useless production magic?
Well, you do it with brilliant coordination and manufactured heavy artillery. Van orchestrates an insanely cinematic takedown. First, visiting noble Panamira blasts the dragon with a fire lance, grounding it. Next, Esparta uses massive earth magic to bury the beast. Then, as it tries to break free, Van's men simultaneously fire his newly crafted armor-piercing ballistas, pinning it down completely. Finally, the overpowered swordsman D rushes in and decapitates it in a single strike. Thanks to Van's strategy, a tiny frontier village slays a dragon with 0 casualties. Unbelievable, right?
And the reward for this impossible feat? 100 platinum coins. The merchant company buys the dragon parts for an absolute fortune. To put this into perspective, this is the exact equivalent of winning a multi-billion-dollar lottery. Overnight, Van has the unlimited capital needed to rapidly expand his growing empire and upgrade his defenses to an insane degree.
As you'd expect, word of an 8-year-old slaying a dragon and building an impenetrable star-shaped fortress reaches the very top. King Dino Baleen actually travels to the village in person. Upon seeing the impossible walls and the sheer loyalty of Van's subjects, the king is just stunned. He admits, "I can no longer view him as a mere child." In a massive narrative payoff, the king officially grants the exiled boy the title of Baron.
moving right along to Chapter 4, The Gelanetta War Begins.
So, Van's peaceful days are abruptly shattered by a rival kingdom. Gelanetta launches a surprise invasion using domesticated wyverns, which are essentially dragons you can ride. Now, what's really interesting here is Prince Unimo. He arrives at Van's city gates, literally laughs at the defenses, and proudly declares that the city will know the true terror of facing a dragon. He completely assumes Van's border city is just a flimsy facade. Boy, is he about to hit a very hard, very deadly brick wall.
This sets up a truly terrifying cliffhanger. The era of traditional swords and magic is officially over. Gelanetta has introduced aerial warfare. So how can ground troops, even hiding behind high walls, possibly fight off a swarm of flying magical beasts?
They do it by completely out-engineering them. Van unveils his latest prototype, repeating ballistas that fire massive armor-piercing shurikens straight into the sky, instantly shredding the wyvern vanguard. Prince Unimo is totally humiliated and retreats. But when Gelanetta captures the allied city of Skutiv, Van marches his troops right to the front lines. Using his production magic, he instantly manufactures massive catapultas directly on the battlefield. These weapons launch exploding spheres, completely wiping out the aerial threat. The magic deemed useless single-handedly wins the war.
And that leads us to our final chapter, an unstoppable feudal lord. This brings us to Van's true ultimate power, inspiring unbreakable loyalty. Nothing shows this better than his friend Artie. See, Artie was born with puppet magic, which was despised by nobles as a dirty trick and actually caused his own family to abuse him. But Van saw its true potential. When Gelanetta forces attack Artie's home, Artie uses his useless puppet magic to pilot a giant mithril silver knight crafted by Van. He completely decimates the enemy and saves his abusers, delivering an incredibly emotional climax that proves Van's ultimate philosophy. No skill is inherently worthless. It's all about how you use it. Which brings us to our final takeaway for this explainer. When society tells you your skills are useless, are you going to accept their judgment, or will you build an unstoppable empire to prove them wrong? Vanifurcio chose to build. He took the worst hand possible and crafted a literal paradise. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I will see you in the next one.